Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Rani Samuel, clinical psychologist and author. And today I want to speak to you about 10 ways to nurture your emotional health. Obviously, there's far more than 10 ways to do that, but I want to share a few areas that you may want to consider that I employ with my patients and in my own life. So firstly, I want to say to you, to enjoy good emotional health, it is critical that you commit yourself to your own healing journey. What do I mean by that? Each of us, young or older, has a full plate of tasks, duties, responsibilities, and we all have different relationships in our lives, whether it's parent-child, friendships, teachers, a partner, a spouse, but there's a plethora of relationships for each and every one of us. And where there's relationships, there's going to be occasionally disagreements and conflict. It is so important that you do not avoid these conflicts, that you do not ignore these conflicts. A lot of people say to me things like, "Oh, I just push it under the carpet. It's not worth the conversation." Well, one day you will trip over that very carpet. How we deal with conflict is often something that we watch our parents do, and those methods become our very own. So I'm wondering, where there's conflict, do you completely avoid it? Are you passive aggressive, or are you openly aggressive about it? None of which is healthy, and this is worthy of reflection. So considering your own healing journey, you need to consider what you are dealing with at present, what about past things that trigger you, and the future, that the type of emotional health you wish to enjoy. And what you do in the present and what you do with your past will determine the emotional health that's coming your way. So I want to encourage you today, do not ignore your own healing journey. So number 2, be focused on the present season in your life. As much as you look at the past and the future, it's very important to be engaged with the present season of your life. Why do I say this? Most of my patients have a lot of anxiety about the future. How they're going to provide for themselves, how will they protect themselves, how will they care for their families. And what happens is that the present becomes full of anxiety, full of concerns. Then they slip into depression sometimes because everything is about the future and we are not here and now. If you are following a spiritual path, you may choose to reflect on the divine providence that has assailed you your entire life. Remember times when things were so difficult and you didn't know how you were going to get out of it. Well, you did get out of it, and the hand of God was on you. People were sent to you. You were never, ever alone. So consider 2 or 3 things that you know you should be engaged with. It's not about 10 things. What are the 2 things of this present season that you are called to? Focus on that with undistracted devotion. So I want you to consider, what percentage of your thoughts, your emotions, and your thinking is directed towards the future? Come back to the present. Be here now and engaged with what God has called you to do now. The third thing I've titled is Watch Your Battery Life. Most people are overscheduled. They're overbusy and go from activity to activity. We must never confuse busyness with purpose. It's fine if there are times when you are busy, but in everything you do, it's important to pace yourself. With any project, there's a planning phase. You have to do lots of reflection. You have to edit your ideas, and then you execute. Busyness just keeps you engaged, full of activities, but very often no particular result. If you don't pace yourself, you will not complete the project. And even if you do, your results will be suboptimal. Also remember, there are things that are really difficult to do, and you can't do everything in your own strength. I take care of a number of patients, and I do know I have to rely on divine grace and strength to be able to be there accurately and compassionately for each and every one of them. So consider if you are doing too much in your own strength, and you may need to submit and draw from divine grace. So look at your calendar. Are you overbooked? Are you overpaced? And are you making time for daily refreshing? So number 4, make time for daily reflection. Most people I know are caught in a cycle of doom scrolling on social media, just watching the next suggested clip or video. If you watch all the news channels, you will see the world in crisis. And among that, it's really hard to carve out a time where you check in with yourself, you check in with your purpose, and you check in with your emotions. If you are just constantly moving from one activity to the other, you will deny yourself many growth opportunities. So if you're going to fulfill purpose, reflection and quiet has to become a significant part of your life. I often, when I read the stories of Jesus, I realize what an unhurried life he led. He didn't even hurry when his friend Lazarus died, because he knew he was going to raise him in a few days' time. But he was not worried about the opinions of people. Nothing pushed him to make it urgent. Understand that you are a divine instrument. And for a divine instrument to work well, there needs to be rest, there needs to be reflection, and there needs to be fine-tuning. You need to get used to doing this on a daily basis, and then it becomes part of your lifestyle. Number 5, whose voice do you listen to? The voice that you listen to will determine the stability of your emotional health. So I'd ask you, how do you deal with bitterness, resentment, and anger? Whose voice do you listen to when you are processing such traumatic and difficult emotions? Do you listen to your own voice most of the time? When emotions are high, you need to understand that good judgment flies out of the window. Most of my patients, even those with fairly high levels of success and good education, make very impulsive decisions during times of emotional turmoil. So while they may sit in the boardroom and direct strategic decisions in their companies, when it comes to their own emotional life, they would make decisions that just take them on a detour. My role in therapy is often to reel them in and ask them to exercise restraint. You see, as you emotionally mature, and mentally and spiritually too, restraint becomes a key characteristic of your life. So I want to ask you this: how restrained are you? And when you are not, who speaks into your life to bring a level of restraint and direct you on a more solid path? From a biblical point of view, there are other voices that can also impact you. I would say one is the voice of your enemy, who's always negative, always discouraging, reminding you of your lowest moments in life, and also accusing you when you start something new, when you level up into your next level of service. The voice will say, "Who do you think you are? Are you really that important? You can't do this." We should, as far as possible, not listen to this voice, because this is not the voice of a loving God. And that brings me to the third voice, the voice of God. Yes, it may sound unusual to hear the voice of God, but go through the passages of Scripture, and this is common practice. We were designed that way, spirit to spirit, to hear the voice of God. It may not always be audible, but you will get divine intuition. You will get a whisper. You will get a sense of knowing. You will get a picture once you start tuning in. And the voice of God is loving, encouraging, calling you upwards, reminding you as to who you were created to be even before you were in your mother's womb. So whose voice are you listening to? Because your emotional health depends on it. Number 6, make place for creativity. All psychologists will tell you how clinical and analytical our workspace is. It's so left brain. We are always analyzing, putting information together, making diagnosis, monitoring, making sure we don't miss anything. And we are constantly on alert for signs and symptoms to see what has changed in the life of a patient. Now, creativity brings that balance. And I find in my field, a lot of psychologists, when they finish their careers as psychologists, you will find them in a very creative and artistic field. They would either be baking bread and owning a bakery, or they'll have an artist studio, or they will be leading walking retreats. So all of us need that creative balance. I want you to know that each and every one of us was born with a talent and a gift. And most of us have left that dormant. So what is it for you? Music? Putting an event together? Art? Photography? Writing? Cooking and baking? Dance? It's really interesting. Recently, I was talking to a patient who is around about 19 years old, and he has not spoken to his father for around 10 years. And we were opening that conversation, and I could see how reluctant he was. He's a real introvert. So I said to him, do you think you could draw me something that reflects how you see each member of your family? Would you be willing to do that? And he says, yes, I could definitely do that. And I said to him, what do you draw? And he said, I draw anime. So I said, that's perfect. Draw me an avatar of your father and draw me the rest of your family as anime in pictures that you and I can start discussions around. So creativity brings a good balance to anything clinical that you may be pursuing. It is also a very useful part of any healing journey. So think about your place of creativity. Do you need to take a class, write in a journal, unearth that dormant gift you have been given? Number 7, I've titled, Whose Life Are You Living? Because many people are sometimes living the unlived lives of their parents. They are living a life of social influences, trying to follow the advice of music icons, movie stars, all of which is currently or always unrealistic. So what do I mean by the unlived lives of your parents? When I speak to people, a lot of them have pursued studies, careers that was predetermined for them, whether it is to go to business school and continue in the family business, or follow the line of everybody becoming lawyers or doctors. And this causes a lot of frustration in people. I remember once being asked to see a young man in his early 20s who was a medical student, and he had attempted to kill himself. And when I went to hospital and sat down, and I met a very, very intelligent young man, and as we spoke and as we pursued things, he confessed to me that his dream was to study computer science and not to be a doctor. And those were very difficult conversations that we had to have between himself and his parents, because it was quite the highlight for them, for their son to be admitted to medical school. So eventually, his parents did release him from that obligation, and he entered computer science. And I want you to know he's really well. So, whose goals are you following? I understand that we also have to be very practical, but there are boundaries that need to happen, because you would cause yourself a lot of unfulfilled resentment and anger, and it will be a path where you're always looking for ways to run away from the job or the studies that you are engaged in. So be honest with yourself. Stop saying yes to every opportunity that presents itself to you. The other thing that you can do is start filtering the people that do not support your current path. Make sure that the people you journey with are part of what I would say is a spiritual convoy that you are engaged in. So live your life in a way that is authentic. Live your life in a way that it's your life and your calling that you are pursuing. That would bring tremendous good emotional health to you. Number 8, Emotional care demands physical rest. I have many patients who come to me suffering from burnout. What do I mean by burnout? If you could imagine a candle, a large one that's brightly lit, and it has a magnificent flame, and over time it simply burns down to the ground until it gets to a place where it cannot be lit again. That's what happens in burnout. Could happen to anyone, even a young person who's struggling with something for a long period of time. I see this with sickness. I see this with people that have work pressure, school pressure, people going through a divorce. This can happen at any stage of life. How do you know if you have burnout? Well, number one, you're going to feel emotionally exhausted. There'll be so much fatigue, tiredness, and sometimes the tiredness does not respond to physical rest. And the person has to really start taking care of themselves. In recent years, there's been cases of long COVID where people have really struggled to come out of it. Secondly, when people burn out, there's a sense of a lack of personal accomplishment. So no matter what the task is, there's a sense of emptiness, that this is so unfulfilling, that there's no purpose in what you're doing. And thirdly, there's a disconnection. So no matter how important the work is, people seem to be a burden wherever you go. And people will tell me their own children, their spouse, their friends become the burden. And first and foremost, we need there to be lots and lots of rest, lots of hydration, lots of wholesome meals, lots of exercise with time. There needs to be physical rest and permission to let the body engage a new path. So emotional health comes from knowing when it's time to press the pause button. Number 9, emotional care blossoms in the safety of supportive and accurate mentors. What do I mean by this? Let me refer you to a scripture, Proverbs 11:14, where it says, "There is safety in a multitude of counselors." I want to add to that and say there is safety in having accurate mentors and counselors in your life. And it's not always good to be independent and make independent decisions and have a vision that you cannot check out with the accurate voices in your life. We all need the gifts and graces and wisdom of other people. And it doesn't matter how far ahead you think you are in life, because any one of us can trip up at short notice. So who are the accurate people in your life? Do you let them speak into your life? Or have you been a lone ranger? Because lone rangers get lost often. And to look after your emotional health and avoid detours and avoid unnecessary errors, speak to the accurate mentors and counselors in your life. Finally, number 10. I've written this in no particular order of importance. And when I was writing down number 10, I realized this could very well be number 1. I encourage all my patients to have what I call a secret place for anchoring. This is a physical space. It could be in a bedroom, it could be a book corner, a space in the house, a garden, somewhere they could go to for quiet, somewhere they could sit and anchor themselves and reorder themselves. A lot of people choose a physical space where they could contemplate and review the day ahead, or sit there and contemplate the day that's just been completed. We all need this emotional, mental, and spiritual anchoring. That's when the emotions in our souls can settle down. So today I want to ask you, where is your secret place? If you don't have one, where could it be? Create it and go there every single day. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.